Sitting alone in the quiet of her bedroom, Mildred stared out the window as the children played. 5 years had passed. But she still remembered that night, the night she rushed to Miracle's house with swollen eyes and a broken heart. Now, she chuckled softly. Mother-in-law, she whispered to herself. More like, mother-in-hate. She shook her head and smiled, but the pain behind the smile was still there. Thanks to Miracle, she survived. Miracle became more than a friend. She became her sister, her strength, her anchor when life tried to drown her. For 5 whole years, Mildred didn't change her behavior. She laughed with Chris. She smiled when Mama Regina called. She sent birthday gifts. She took family pictures. She was the perfect daughter-in-law. But inside her heart, she was laying bricks, quietly building the walls for her escape. Every move she made, every word she didn't say, it was all part of the plan. One weekend, Mildred picked up her phone and called Mama Regina. Good evening, Ma. Mildred, my daughter, how are you? We're fine, Ma. Sarah and Samuel have been asking about you. They miss their grandma. Can you come over for dinner on Sunday? She didn't tell Chris. That was intentional. Regina agreed without hesitation. She loved feeling important. That was her weakness. Mildred smiled to herself as she hung up. She looked at her children Sarah and Samuel. They were the reason she stayed so long. They were the reason she didn't break. Chris had pressured her to get pregnant quickly. He didn't want to waste time. Mildred had done everything to delay the pregnancy, but somehow, it happened. And even though the pain still burned inside her, those 2 children became her light. Her reason. Her power. Now Chris had started talking about a 3rd child. And Mildred knew that was the cue. She had to move. She had to strike. And it had to be soon. Regina stepped into the house with her usual dramatic smile, holding a nylon bag of fruits. My daughter, she said cheerfully, stretching her arms out. Mildred smiled and gave her a warm hug. Mama, you're welcome. I've missed you. Oh. Everything looked normal. But Mildred's heart was ice cold. Moments later, the front door opened again. Chris entered, still in his work shirt, surprised to see his mother. Mummy. What are you doing here? Regina answer. Your wife invited me. Regina gave him a quick look. I didn't know you'd be back early, she said quietly. Or, does she know anything? Chris glanced around, lowered his voice, and replied. She doesn't suspect anything. Regina exhaled deeply and sat down. Remember, till today we don't know who entered the house that day. We assumed a rat knocked over the vase. Nobody was caught. They both chuckled quietly, unaware that Mildred was standing just beyond the corridor wall. She heard everything. Every single word. Their voices felt like blades cutting through her chest. The people she once loved were the ones planning her downfall. But now, she was no longer the broken girl. Now, she had a plan. Still smiling, Mildred stepped out of the corridor and said sweetly, Dinner is served. Chris blinked, almost guilty. Let me freshen up, he said quickly, avoiding her eyes. Regina adjusted her blouse and followed Mildred to the dining table. Mildred had cooked everything with care: egusi soup, jollof rice, fried plantain, chicken, and salad. The aroma filled the house. Minutes later, Chris returned in a clean shirt and jeans. He sat. They held hands. Mildred led the prayer. Everything looked normal, peaceful. But Mildred was watching them. Every bite. Every glance. Every word. This was no longer dinner. This was the beginning of her revenge. As they ate in silence, Mama Regina suddenly asked, Where are my grandkids? Have they gone to bed? Mildred smiled but didn't respond. They're sleeping, she said, keeping her voice even. 5 minutes passed. Then Mildred couldn't take it anymore. She placed her fork down slowly, and without warning, she looked directly at Chris. Christian Ademola Bankole, she said. using his full name for the first time in years. Chris's face tightened, a flash of panic in his eyes. "Do you know who you are, Chris?" Mildred mocked, laughing bitterly. "You're a fool." Regina looked up, confusion spreading across her face, but Mildred didn't stop. "Do you know how easy it would have been for me to kill you all these years?" she continued, her voice cold, filled with years of pent-up rage. Chris tried to speak, but Mildred raised a hand. "You cheated on me. Several times, with different women. You thought I didn't know, didn't you?" She turned her gaze to Mama Regina, her face twisting into something dark. "And the funniest thing, the most disgusting thing, is that you weren't just cheating with any random woman, but with this skimming snake sitting right there. Your so-called sugar mommy, Mrs. Regina Bancole." Chris and Regina both froze, the color draining from their faces. "You played your roles well," Mildred said, her voice cutting through the tension. "A backstabbing mother-in-law, a cheating but loving husband. And you both thought I was too blind to see your plans." She paused, letting the words sink in, then let out a bitter laugh. "You thought you could use me as a baby factory and then throw me away. Well, I've got news for you." Her words rang in the room like a slap. Chris sat frozen, sweat slowly forming on his forehead. He swallowed hard and finally asked, How did you know all this?" Mildred tilted her head, her voice calm too calm. "Oh, Chris, you're shocked," she said with a quiet laugh. "The funny thing is you don't even know how to hide your tracks. You thought you were smart, but you were just messy. Let me tell you something." She looked at both of them. "I was the rat." Chris blinked, confused. "Yes. That vase that broke 5 years ago. I was the one who knocked it over. I had come to surprise my sweet mother-in-law. And I received the surprise of my life." Regina gasped quietly, covering her mouth. Mildred continued. "After that day, I stopped being your victim. I hired a private investigator. And guess what?" She smiled coldly. "I installed tiny cameras in our bedroom and bathroom. Every lie, every visit, every phone call, every text. I have it all. And you, Christian, didn't disappoint." Chris stood up, trembling now, his voice shaking. "You're lying." Mildred's eyes narrowed. "Oh, and just so you know, Regina," she said, turning toward the older woman, "I'm aware you're not his mother." Regina froze, her face draining of color. "You're just his sugar mommy. You ended your own husband's life so you could be free with this boy." Chris tried to interrupt, but Mildred raised her hand. "Don't. I'm not done." She took a step closer to both of them. "I also know about your illegal dealings at your company. The fake contracts. The money laundering. The shell accounts." She pulled out her phone. "And the police. They're on their way. Right now." Chris's face twisted with rage. He raised his hand to slap her. But Mildred was faster. Her hand flew up first, grabbing his wrist midair with a strength he didn't expect. Before Chris could recover, Mildred's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Jason." From the hallway, a tall, muscular man stepped into the room. "Jason, her longtime friend and private bodyguard. You thought I came to this war unarmed?" Mildred said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Teach him a lesson." Jason didn't hesitate. He grabbed Christian and began to beat him mercilessly, but not to death. Just enough to make him feel what it meant to underestimate a woman who had been silent too long. Regina screamed, grabbing her bag. Christian managed to wriggle free, face blooded, shirt torn, and ran with Regina toward the estate gate. But as they reached the exit, sirens wailed. 2 police trucks were already waiting. Within seconds, both of them were surrounded. They screamed and begged, but it was too late. The truth had caught up with them. The news spread fast. The neighborhood was in shock. Mrs. Regina was not Christian's mother. Christian was not the loving husband he pretended to be. The illegal activities in his company had long been flagged, but it was Mildred's evidence that sealed their fate. They were charged and taken away. And Mildred? She stood in the now quiet living room, holding her 2 sleeping children. "It's over," she whispered. "Finally." Mildred didn't cry that night. She made tea. She put her children to bed. She opened all the windows and let the night air blow through the house. And then she sat outside on the steps, looking at the sky. Her best friend, Miracle, arrived and sat beside her. "You're free now," Miracle said gently. "No, I'm alive now," Mildred replied, with a tired smile. "The old me died 5 years ago in that corridor. Tonight, she was born again." Months passed. Mildred sold the house. She moved into a new home with her kids, one she bought with her own money, in her name. She opened a wellness center for women who had been through emotional abuse and betrayal. She became a speaker, a mentor, and a silent helper to many. Life didn't magically become perfect, but it became real, peaceful, and hers. "I learnt life's lesson in the hardest way," she once said during an interview. "But I'm thankful. Because it made me who I am. I don't hate anymore. I don't even wish them evil. I just hope they find what they were truly looking for." She smiled. "As for me, I found myself. And I found peace." Don't forget to like, comment, share, and for more jaw-dropping stories subscribe to Tales by Amy.